Welcome to the MarTech.org podcast.
Welcome to the MarTech.org podcast. I'm Mike Pastor, editorial director at MarTech. Today I'm joined by Juliette Aiken, CMO of Dotdigital. Juliette and I are going to talk about some of the findings from Dotdigital's CMO report, which is based on a survey of 750 CMOs in the US, the UK, and Australia. Welcome, Juliette. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
All right. So before we get to AI, because we all know AI is going to come up at some point, let's talk a little bit about marketers' investment priorities, which is just one of the areas that you guys covered in your CMO report. A lot of marketers have been facing tight budgets for the last couple of years, which has made investments in MarTech tools a bit of a challenge. Did that come across in your research?
Yes, definitely. So looking at the research and the respondents or responses of all of the marketing leaders we spoke to, we found that 31% of marketers expressed facing budget limitations. And that is across a backdrop of marketers also experiencing increased market competition and, of course, changing consumer expectations, which is all nothing new, but it does make for a very challenging and very crowded environment. So really the devil is in the detail, and marketing has to be excellent, especially post 2020, 2021, when I think a lot of digital marketers experience sort of everyone coming online and everyone doing a pretty good job at marketing. So it really needs to be good. So I think in terms of MarTech investment specifically, we're seeing a lot of stack consolidation. And we're also seeing marketers experiment with newer types of marketing technology as a way to cut through the noise. And this is evidenced by investments in things like technologies and that help from a social media marketing perspective, but also influencer marketing, but also technologies that, can do a bit of everything. So that goes back to that consolidation point, technologies that take a more transferable approach, I should say, especially when it comes to their data, as a lot of the being excellent part tends to fall down when you don't have your data under one roof.
I know one of the things that you guys found was a big priority for marketers is automation. And for some of us, we're immediately going to think about marketing automation platforms, the Marketos of the world, for instance. We might also think about AI, which can be used to automate these common repeatable tasks that take up a lot of time throughout the day for marketers. Tell us what you learned about the desire for automation from marketers.
It's definitely evolved over time. I think obviously the space of automation and specifically marketing automation has already been on quite the journey in the last 10 plus years, let's say. In the last 5 years in particular, I think what we've seen is an acceleration for marketing automation platforms to adopt CDP-like capabilities. There was this, investment and move towards CDPs various years ago, but we found that a lot of businesses have somewhat come back from that and actually find, again, they want these capabilities under one roof, and they're trusting marketing automation providers to give them what they need from a data perspective. Similarly, marketing automation platforms have expanded their reach by investing in integrations. I think if you think about your CRMs or your commerce platforms that you want to integrate your marketing stack with, we no longer have these 5 players in the market that everyone flocks to. It's a much more diverse landscape, and this is really the case across the globe. So we're finding a lot of marketing automation platforms like ourselves working with iPaaS providers to really help accelerate our ability to develop integrations into the myriad of technologies out there. And so with all of that being said, I think the next phase, and I think what marketers are now looking to automation platforms for it's kind of twofold. It's one, more autonomous automation. So it's the automation without the need for human intervention. You don't want to always have to tell the automation what to do because it kind of defeats the point. But then also separately, it's about leaning into the predictive capabilities that we've seen automation platforms display, which is, again, that next level. And it's that sort of assisted form of automated marketing.
All right, let's talk about AI. It's time to talk about AI. Why don't you give us an overview of what your research found with regards to marketing and AI?
It was very interesting, and it definitely took me by surprise. So I think what struck me the most was not how widespread the usage of AI is. I think we found every single of our 750 marketing leaders around the world, they say that their teams use AI in some capacity, which, as I said, wasn't surprising. But what was surprising is how varied its application is. So if we look at all the various use cases that our respondents highlighted in the report, you can broadly segment them into three buckets. One being reporting and analytics, two being generative AI, and then the third one being automation, which is where that marketing automation, but also social media scheduling and those capabilities sit. So we really saw that in terms of the application, it was incredibly spread, and specifically speaking to the usage of Gen AI, which is obviously where we've seen probably the biggest unforeseen surge in the last year and a half or so. What surprised me was the usage of Gen AI specifically within video over, for example, imagery or copy. And I think something that we've taken away, me and my team here at Dotdigital, is that it's really worthwhile within the marketing community having these peer-to-peer conversations, because depending on whether your business takes a top-down or a bottom-up approach to AI implementation, I think can vastly change how you integrate it into your day-to-day. So it's keep talking is basically what we took away from it when it comes to marketing community and peer-to-peer engagement.
Yeah, it's interesting. You guys found that almost everybody says their teams are using AI. I've certainly seen research from C-levels, maybe outside the marketing organization, who say, we're not everybody is using AI because they don't know that it's being used.
Yeah.
But as you said, the generative AI seems to be in fairly broad use. What's next when we get beyond the generative AI to help with content creation? Because that seems pretty popular now. What's kind of the next AI frontier for marketers?
Mm-hmm. I think it's not entirely dissimilar to in that it can relate to the expectations that marketers have of marketing automation and automation more generally. So I think in terms of the next step for AI in content generation specifically, which, as we know, is incredibly time consuming, AI is still very much presented as the machine, and it's the machine versus the human. And that makes us feel comfortable to some extent, because we don't want to think of an AI as being able to display empathetic ability or human-like traits, as it probably gets a little bit scary for many of us at that point. But I do think there's a case for thinking about the role that AI can play in creativity. So obviously, if you've got a marketing campaign that is entirely driven by AI, that's great. But as we know with AI, is that it's going to continue to train on its own data. So there's this sort of tunnel effect risk, whereby if you're thinking about an e-commerce company and the types of products that they might be displaying in their content, their emails, their website, MMS, anything else. If you have an entirely data-driven AI model that is dictating what people see, their world and your product discoverability is going to get smaller and go down. So I think there's an aspect of this, I like to talk about it like wildcard functionality, where AI recognizes that consumers and humans are also impulsives. And so I think it'll be really interesting when we get to that phase of AI is going to help us try entirely new things on a sort of multivariate basis within our content. So I think that would be an interesting next development there. And as I mentioned before, I think it's the predictive capabilities of AI, which again is where a lot of ground remains untouched.
All right. Look ahead to 2025 for me, because it's coming up pretty quickly. What do you think we'll be talking about when it comes to marketing and technology in the year ahead?
Great question. I think this is something that is very close to probably my area of interest, and specifically an area that we have spoken about at Dotdigital for some years now. We've historically called it responsible marketing. I think probably in more colloquial terms, I would talk about it as just authenticity. And it's the topic of authenticity that keeps rearing its head, and I think is something that is going to dominate a lot of the sub-trends that we're already seeing within the marketing space and the marketing community. So if we're thinking about social media, if we're thinking about ad placement, I know the report specifically speaks to the increased investment in influencer platforms and particularly micro-influencers there. How can technology and AI help us generate micro experiences in again, a scalable way? I think one-to-one marketing has been a buzzword, and I think in most people's reality, one-to-one isn't truly the objective. But if we can use all the data that we've got, thanks to all of this, the CDP capabilities that many marketing automation platforms out there have adopted, if we can really put that to work to generate content that is relevant to a specific subset of users in a way that is true to their experiences and their needs, and ultimately be helpful in their journey with you as a customer, then I think we'll be in a great place. So I think we're going to be looking across our processes, people, technology, to be more authentic as brands in the market.
All right, we did not spend a bunch of time screwing around with our lights and our cameras before this podcast because we want to be authentic. Juliette Aiken, CMO of Dotdigital. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for listening to the MarTech.org podcast. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at martech.org/newsletters.